One of the biggest challenges that people who live with persistent or chronic pain deal with is the sense that no one understands. Nobody else gets it. And they're very right. They're very, valid in that feeling, because the reality is most people don't get it. They don't understand. As humans, we only really understand something when we've gone through it. And so, there's a great difference between sympathy and empathy. In Brene Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart, she talks about very different place of coming from sympathy versus empathy. So sympathy to me says, I imagine what you're going through and I feel bad for you. Empathy says, I know what you're feeling. I understand. I'm there with you. So the reality is, unless you are living with persistent pain, unless you have pain that is not going away, for various different reasons, people who live with persistent or chronic pain really are experiencing sympathy from the people around them for the most part. And sympathy leaves us feeling a little empty. Sympathy is nice. It's nice to know people care and that they're thinking about you. But when you are experiencing pain day after day after day, empathy, when you get it from someone, is so rich. It's so, it hits the spot. So the reality is most people don't get it, and they won't get it. And that can really leave us with a feeling of aloneness and experiencing oftentimes people's judgment because they don't get it. They cannot really understand why one day we can seem to do a lot of things, and then maybe later that day or the next day, it's like, I can't do that. So there's a lot of saying, I can't do that. No. And so it gets very fatiguing. So the mental, emotional game that people have to deal with when they're living with persistent pain is this, people don't understand. And often people are judgmental without necessarily meaning to, and they're not being malicious, but they're judging or rating what's happening with the person in pain relative to their scale as a regular person. And so the person living with pain often feels that judgment, that opinion, that they don't understand. And no matter how much we explain it to someone, they can kind of go, wow, that's really awful. But again, it's sympathy, not empathy. So what do we do with that? Because you can have, good friends, you can have a supportive partner, you can have a great family, but there are times where it's just you and yourself. So me, myself, and I. And if I am really being impacted by the fact that people don't understand, and that I'm really frustrated, and it's creating grief and sadness and on all those kinds of emotions, how do I find space for that? And so one of the many ways is something I learned in my yoga teacher training. And it's a Sanskrit word called Aparigraha, and it means non-attachment. And so when I first heard of this concept, I thought, oh yeah, I don't know if that's attainable. So not attachment. Because we're wired to care what people think. It's part of our tribe survival mechanism. We are, as humans, sort of cataloging, comparing. We're trying to see where we fit. We are matching our behavior to be maintained in the tribe. So how do we get away from that? Well, we don't really get all the way away from it. But if we can practice non-attachment, then it can help us stay steady in the face of people around us don't understand. They're giving us sympathy, not empathy, and we get really tired of not feeling heard and seen. So non-attachment, the way that I kind of really had, a bit of a bell rang for me, that aha moment was, if I'm going to be not attached to negative opinion or judgment or this not understanding, if I'm going to be not attached to that and not have an emotional, like a big negative emotional response, then I also need to practice not being attached to people's approval. And that's hard because I have been a people pleaser. And so how do I not do that? It's like, well, I can appreciate a compliment, and I love support. I love it when people around me reach out and are kind and supportive and give me that sense of, togetherness and connectedness. So I can still appreciate that, but not be hyper attached to it, not thrive on or need someone else's approval or okayness or understanding. I can practice not being attached to that. So when someone understands, it's like, yes, that's awesome. And moving on. So appreciating, the support, appreciating compliments, appreciating it when you do get understanding, and enjoying when someone's able to empathize rather than sympathize. But in practicing that non-attachment or that non-excessive attachment to approval, I can also then practice not being excessively attached to someone's disapproval or their lack of understanding or their lack of empathy. And it is a process. So some of the other strategies that I use for dealing with persistent pain and the mind games are things that you can implement right away. This is definitely a journey. This is definitely a process, because as humans, we will respond with like, oh, somebody doesn't understand, or oh, they disapprove. So that the knee-jerk reaction is to have an emotional response, an emotional attachment to approval or disapproval. The practice comes in recognizing that and taking a step back and going, okay, I see that emotion. I don't have to own that. And I can sort of move myself a little bit away from that emotion so that it's not as strong. And so if we do that for the good, and we can also do it for the bad, it really just becomes emotions that are around us start to just not impact us as much. We're more steady. We're more, true to ourselves, so that whatever's coming at us, doesn't matter if it's good, bad, otherwise, it's someone else's emotion, and we don't have to own that. So that's a process, and it's a bit bigger than just this video. But that is a practice that I learned through my yoga teacher training and my yoga practice that can be a part of the toolkit to use for pain management, but also not managing our pain, but managing how we live with pain in a world with people around us who are not experiencing the same kind of connectivity with their world in the same way that we do, because we connect with the world through our nervous system, and our nervous system says that's painful, whereas people without persistent pain are connecting with their world in a way that their brain says, oh, hey, that was experience, that was pressure, that was wind, that was movement. Whereas people with persistent pain, their nervous system is interpreting their world and their experiences often as painful. So I hope this helps. Aparigraha, if you want to have a little bit more learning on it, lots and lots of information out there, books and online, and I hope this helps.